For decades, American soft power in Taiwan has run deeper than any military footprint could, promoting a pro-US, anti-China ideology through classrooms, media, and study abroad pipelines, which would shape the minds of generations. We'll discuss this and more on this week's China Report. Welcome to the China Report. I'm your host, Amanda Yee. These are this week's headlines. Japan is framing its unprecedented post-World War II military expansion as an engine for domestic prosperity, stating in its latest defense white paper that boosting arms production will actively drive economic growth. The annual assessment identifies China as Japan's chief strategic threat alongside Russia and North Korea. Emphasizing a tech-driven approach, Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi's administration plans to incorporate commercial innovation, fund startups, and integrate advanced civilian technologies into defense manufacturing to strengthen deterrence, particularly surrounding potential conflicts in the Taiwan Strait. Bizarrely, the ministry wrapped its white paper in an anime-style cover depicting a prosperous cityscape, linking national defense directly to citizens' future well-being. But here's the reality. Japan has already pushed military-related spending to 2% of its GDP, funding long-range strike missiles, unmanned drones, and startup tech, representing its largest military buildup since World War II. But Takaichi's government faces mounting pressure to clarify how it will sustain further military budget increases without adding pressure to the country's overstretched public finances. This is something you won't see on mainstream media. Hundreds of thousands of people in Taiwan demanding the resignation of the DPP government over a cooking oil scandal. On July 25th, over 200,000 people flooded the streets of Taipei to demand government accountability following the massive toxic cooking oil scandal. Organized by the opposition KMT party, the rally erupted after raw soybean oil was found to contain dangerous levels of benzoapyrene, a known carcinogen, at over 4 times the legal limit. The contamination forced the recall of over 500 products, impacted over 1,300 businesses, and resulted in what amounts to $5.2 million in fines for the supplier, Central Union Oil. Protesters and opposition leaders slammed the ruling Democratic Progressive Party government's handling of the crisis. In a statement posted to Facebook, the KMT called food safety a basic human right rather than something people should risk their lives for. The KMT, along with demonstrators, are now demanding the immediate resignation of Premier Cho Jung-tae and a public apology from President Lai Ching-te over the alleged cover-ups and delays. China's massive naval hospital ship, Auspicious Ark, set sail on its maiden overseas humanitarian voyage, a 200-day deployment named Mission Harmony 2026. Setting sail from the port of Qingdao, the vessel is headed across Africa and South Asia to provide free medical support, perform surgeries, and foster cultural exchanges. This marks the 12th deployment of China's broader Mission Harmony initiative since 2010. Designed to deliver comprehensive healthcare, Auspicious Ark functions as a fully equipped floating hospital packed with advanced medical technology. The crew of healthcare professionals will operate across 18 clinical departments, 5 diagnostic support units, and 8 operating theaters to perform complex examinations, treatments, and life-saving procedures for local communities along its route. Beyond medical care, the ship's crew will take part in community and cultural events in the countries it visits, strengthening China's diplomatic ties across the global south. Washington just sanctioned some of China's top universities. Last week, the Pentagon added Fudan University, Shanghai Jiao Tong University, and other Chinese research institutions to its Section 1286 list, alongside entities from Russia and Iran. Created under the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act, this Section 1286 list is updated annually and effectively bans U.S. institutions from partnering with these universities on research or technology exchanges, all over allegations of military ties and potential national security threats. 130 institutions were named in this updated list. Out of those, 88 are Chinese. Beijing fired back, with the Chinese Ministry of Commerce releasing a statement condemning Washington's Cold War mentality, stating this is just another example of how the US continues to overstretch the concept of national security. The last US base left Taiwan in 1979, but what remained was an infrastructure of colonization that proved far more durable than any kind of military presence. A system of US soft power and ideological influence that has shaped Taiwan's political landscape in the decades since, through classrooms, study abroad pipelines, and a pro-Western media apparatus. To discuss this, we're so happy to have on Dr. Chen Meei-shia. Dr. Chen is an emerita professor of public health at National Cheng Kung University in Taiwan. She lives in Taiwan and has been active in resistance movements against US and Japanese imperialism for over 50 years. Dr. Chen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, it's really good to have you. I wanted to bring you on because you recently wrote this really interesting article for Tricontinental. And in it, you discuss a form of U.S. imperialism that's not given as much attention as, U.S. military bases in the region, what you call U.S. ideological control in Taiwan. So as I mentioned, the last base left in 1979, but the U.S. left this really robust ideological infrastructure that takes the form of transmitting pro-U.S. Propaganda through Taiwan's education system, U.S. government-funded study abroad programs, and a pro-American media apparatus. And I think this is a really interesting angle to approach this issue of Taiwan, because we in the U.S. don't really see it. We don't really talk about it. We just kind of see this pro-American ideology as natural or organic. So I'd love for you to talk about that, what this system looks like, and how it begins in Taiwan's education system, and how it shaped Taiwanese society in the last 3 decades, to the point where anti-Chinese and anti-communism as kind of ideology has become mainstream. So can you talk specifically about what this looks like, especially at the educational level? Is it through textbooks? Is it through a revision of history? Please take it away.
So to your question about how this ideological control is being carried out and also influence the individuals, is first the system, the education system, but also culture system, also influence a lot. And like when I was very little, when we were in a grade school, we would have like posters of like the communist is such and such, very bad. So we would see the posters everywhere, in Taiwan and in our school, our grade school. So that's cultural policy and also educational policy. So the culture also not only related to education, but also related to like media. The newspapers or the TV programs, is formulated by or influenced by the government, and the government is like promoting the anti-communist ideology. So that also. Mm-hmm. So educational school, the education from grade school to junior high to senior high, it's all like that. Even the college. So China is more of stereotyped about China, and that also is penetrated into the cultural policy and also the educational policy and the government propaganda. Like I say, the posters of Mao is bandit. There's nothing about like Mao's thoughts. It's more like stereotyping Mao, and also even Zhu De. Zhu De is another general in CCP, and he worked with he and Mao Zedong are the most prominent communist. And these two people in Taiwan were very much stereotyped. Okay, so I think it's like an educational system, textbooks, an outline of the textbooks, and also the cultural policy, and or even another educational system that affect us, the intellectual, is after I finished with my college education, most of the people in Taiwan, because they're educated to be that way, to be anti-communist and pro-America, so a lot of them wanted to have their advanced study in the U.S. Okay, so they will have to apply for fellowship, scholarship, that kind of things, and the U.S. government provide different kind of fellowship for the intellectuals in Taiwan after they finish their college, if they want to go to the U.S. for advanced education. So like I'm the very typical case of this kind of policy. So I got the fellowship from East West Center, and East West Center is the funding is from the U.S. U.S. Government. Okay, and the purpose of that the East West Center is to educate and of course support the intellectuals like me, so that they would be pro-America, and also, in Taiwan they were anti-communist, but also pro-American, but even more education in the U.S. universities. Okay, so that is like the pro-American elites. Most of the people in elites in Taiwan, pro-American elites, and they would the elites would very go up to like the leaders of the educational system or political system, all of this. So you can see that it's a many aspect of Taiwan society.
Yeah, I think you're a really good person to speak on this, because like you said, you are a product of this system, and you were granted a fellowship by the U.S. government to study at the East West Center, to study in Hawaii. Looking back at your career as an academic in Taiwan, how can you talk a little bit more about how you saw these mechanisms, funding, curriculum, academic prestige? How did they shape the mindsets of your colleagues and students over the decades? And when did you have, when was that turning point when you realized, what was going on?
I was really my family is a peasant family. My parents are all peasants. Yeah. So in Taiwan, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, the economic situation was not that great. And then the agriculture and the farmers are very much affected. So like my family was very poor when I was very young. So my thinking is more like from the lower social class. But then I was educated in the grade school and all the school system. I was educated to be anti-communist, but it's not in a very profound way. It's just like, the communists, they are not democratic. They know there's no freedom, and they are terrible. And the people in China they're hungry all the time. They have to, like in Taiwan when we were very young, were told that the people in mainland China ate the skin of the trees. We call supi, because they're so poor. But then, since in Taiwan, we are under, like Taiwan was under martial law. That's another aspect I haven't talked about. Taiwan was under martial law from 1947 to 1987, 40 years. And under martial law, we're not supposed to gather together. We're not supposed to talk about politics. And if you talk about politics and the security system in Taiwan would notice that, and they would pay attention. And some people, if they're activists, a lot of them were arrested and even killed. So our families, all the families, including my families, would say that, oh, just read, just study very hard. Don't get into politics. So in Taiwan is that way. So like for my case, I was that way, educated that way, brainwashed that way for all my young period, like the school and also the college. So I went to East-West Center to University of Hawaii under that kind of impression that, well, I would go to the U.S. and then have a better education, get my master's and PhD. Then I would come back to be a professor. So that's my thinking then. But then, so I went to University of Hawaii, and then about the second semester of my education, I was in public health, and my education in my class, and we have about 20-something students, and I was one of them, and I was the only foreign student. So in the education, we have, just the more professional public health education. But there's one time in the, we say we have a seminar course, seminar class. In the seminar class, a petition that was turned from one person to another person, a petition for the student to sign in my class. I saw the petition, and then I look at the petition, and it's in English, for the older students. And then the petition say that the Taiwanese government and the KMT government arrested an intellectual. His name is Chen Meei-shia, and this person was arrested, but he didn't do, like anything. The only thing he did is he tried to study about socialism, about mainland China, and he sold books about mainland China. So then he was arrested, and the petition said that he was arrested, and very likely he would be killed. So I saw the petition, then I was really shocked. Like I have how do you say that, cognitive dissonance. I was thinking, well, Taiwan is so good. It's my I thought Taiwan is very good. How come this petition says that a person was arrested and is going to be killed? So that caused, in my mind, caused a really serious cognitive dissonance. So I start with that, and because I need to resolve this issue in my brain. So I asked around, and then some people just say that, don't care about it. It's that done by the communists. So you shouldn't have to pay any attention to this petition. Like in University of Chicago, we have East Asian library, and the library has all sorts of books about like Chinese history, modern Chinese history, which a lot of them were banned, not allowed in Taiwan. So we are not able to read these books when we were in Taiwan. But then once we were kind of like stimulated by all these happenings, the Taiwanese students in the U.S. Started raising this question and said, well, we have to go to the library to study. Why is that way? Then I'm one of them, and many of them were so much shocked, by all of this, and they were enlightened to find out, the history we were taught in Taiwan is the history of the people in power or in control. It's not the history of the people's history, typical of the students. So my example, like in my case, I was with all this education, looking at reading the history books, and which have very different interpretation of the Chinese modern history, and then also the my fellow student who try to educate me, telling me how to look at all these books, transformed my my thoughts. So I went through really great transformation in my thoughts, and it was very easy. It's easy. No, I shouldn't say very easy. It's easier for me to accept this kind of interpretation because I was from a peasant family. So I know that the peasants were not in a good situation during that period of time, 50s and 60s and 70s. So there must be something wrong. Why, my parents had worked extremely hard, but the whole family were not having enough money, not having enough food to eat. So there must be something. And then once we were enlightened and read all this history, we suddenly realized that the education that we got in Taiwan is a very different kind of education. And also the way they look at history, the way they look at the social phenomena is from more of the people from high top, the people of in power. But then if you look at the history from people's perspective, like from peasants, like my parents' perspective, you find that it's very different. For example, I just mentioned about the U.S. were involved in the Civil War between KMT and then between and CCP. And in CCP, was very much, the mission of CCP is to really get out of colonization of China, and they find that the peasants and the workers in China were it was suffering. So so the CCP was saying that in order to revive our country, we have to raise up our peasants and enlighten our peasants, and also our workers, to let them know that you are not destined to have such a poor situation. There's some problem with the system. So their interpretation of the system is very different from KMT's interpretation. So KMT is very much what the entrepreneurs can, and they're not supportive of the peasant class or the workers. So these two parties have very different interpretation of the Chinese history.
That's a really interesting story about how you came to be enlightened, as you call it. I really like that you call it that. I guess I'm really wondering about your interpretation of the Taiwan situation today, right? Over the past 3 decades, public opinion has really shifted toward a distinct Taiwanese political and national identity. I was looking at this Pew poll that was released in 2024, and it finds that a lot of younger people are identifying more as Taiwanese than Chinese. It said that 83% of young people in Taiwan consider themselves primarily Taiwanese. 15% consider themselves both Taiwanese and Chinese, and only 1% consider themselves primarily Chinese. And, while from what I understand, the majority of people in Taiwan want to maintain the status quo with China, there is more of a growing opposition to reunification. And undoubtedly, that has a lot to do with what you were just talking about, this kind of ideological control that the U.S. has maintained over the province for the past few decades, and how it's really elevated Western values like Western liberalism, capitalism, anti-communism, anti-China. But I think a lot of people on the opposite side would say, they would argue that against this kind of ideological training, they would argue that the Taiwanese public, genuinely embraced these kinds of values independently, rather through this kind of imperialist design or this ideological infrastructure that you're talking about. So I guess I'm wondering, how would you respond to that? How would you respond to the political situation and political identity in Taiwan today?
Okay. If we, for my case, before I went to University of Hawaii, before I was enlightened by the movement, I was just like majority of the people in Taiwan, the young or old. Okay? They're just like myself, being there before I went to Hawaii, before I was enlightened by the movement. So people like that, like myself in Taiwan, then they were not given, I should say, they were brainwashed for a long period of time starting when they're in the grade school and then junior high, senior high, college. But in terms of Taiwan independence, that before the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, were elected, being the party in power, the Taiwan independence was not very strong. And that's because, like I said, there are two parts. One is ideological control of anti-communist. So majority of the people are like that way. But then in terms of separating the Chinese from the Chinese in Taiwan from Chinese in the mainland, that kind of ideology did not become more like more popular. Like you say, the 80% of the people were pro like separating from the independence. So the KMT kept more like a Chinese culture than the DPP. And the reason being, I just mentioned that after the 90s, and we need to look at the political economic structure. So that during the 1990s, it was after a few decades of economic growth, export-oriented policy, economic growth. So Taiwan, the income is greater, is higher, and the more people, like my family, I mentioned that when I was very little, like 50s and 60s, and we barely have enough food to eat, But then starting from the 80s, my family's economic situation was better. And that's not only my family, it's the families in Taiwan. So the economic situation improved. And then the social class, the distribution of social class also had a lot of change. And the most important one is indigenous entrepreneurial class. We call a newly rising. Is new. Previously, there's no such class, social class. But then during the 90s, it's become larger, and its voice, this social class, the voice of this social class becomes larger. And this social class, you will see, is very different from like my class, the peasant class, to peasant class is like, I don't want, I want to be the master. The peasant class wouldn't be thinking that way. But then the newly raised entrepreneurial will have that kind of thinking. Is that I want to be, we want to be in control. We are smart. We want to be in control. Okay? And also the independent movement. There's a little bit of independent movement. And the U.S. and also Japan supported the independent movement, and so, but it was not very strong. But then in the 90s, it became very much stronger because of this newly arising entrepreneurial class. So starting from the 90s, the pro-independence movement was stronger and influenced a lot of people in Taiwan. And also the DPP, this party, and these parties represent the interest of the newly rising entrepreneurial class. So they match together, and That's why during the 90s, the movement, the independent party, independent movement becomes much more popular. And then in the years of 2000, even stronger. And all of this, of course, will influence the people in Taiwan. So it is not as easy. So that's the reason, I say that with this, and you can see, like in the Pew survey, saying that majority of the people say we just want to have the status quo, not to change, because the economic situation in Taiwan is relatively good, and so they were kind of like enjoying their life in Taiwan. We want to be in Taiwan, even though in the past 10 years, China economic growth is tremendous, so it's not the same. So I think the situation that I'm describing now it's not, I don't think it's going to stay for a long time.
I just want to ask you one more question before we let you go. And okay. I just want, you talked a little bit about the resistance against US and Japanese imperialism back then. But I want to talk about, this really alarming push toward Japanese remilitarization now. And, that within the U.S. military encirclement of China that's going on, Washington keeps sending more weapons to Taiwan. There are the military exercises around the region keep getting bigger and bigger every year. And then under Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, Japan's rapidly moving away from this post-World War II pacifist policies and pacifist principles. So what is the feeling in Taiwan right now? Are they nervous about the U.S. Driving this war against China and then them getting caught in it? What is the overall mood?
Very high tariff rates, all of this. So Taiwanese people previously, like I say, Taiwanese people with this kind of brainwashing ideological control, Taiwanese people always think that U.S. is great, is wonderful, So U.S. is very much a free country and democratic country, and so we should really worship them. They're so good. So that in the past many years is that way. But then with Trump's doing many things that are very, very unreasonable or unjust, and people can see it in Taiwan. So the way they look at the U.S. Has been changing. Okay. Previously, we think that, if we have a war, the U.S. government would come to help us. That's the mainstream thinking previously. But then nowadays, a lot of people, the people in Taiwan were saying that, no, I don't believe. People say, well, I don't believe that Trump the U.S. government will come to help us. So I think the people in Taiwan in the last 1 or 2 years have been changing in terms of how they think of the U.S. And also previously they were thinking that the U.S. government have the military bases, in up to 1979, and then after that is arms sale, a very great arms sale. The Taiwanese people were given the false expectation that, U.S. government is selling us arms, so we should be okay. But then in the past few years, they started thinking that, why do we spend so much money? It's a great sum and for the arms sale. So I think the suspicion of the U.S. government support has been increasing, and so what we were the people like us, are trying to give the people in Taiwan more of a people's interpretation of the society and also of the history. We're finding that there are more and more Taiwanese being suspicious of, we call it, is Fan Mei is anti-U.S. and P-Mei or critical of the U.S. government. This kind of thinking has been more and more prominent. So I think this survey only, address the only superficial part of people's thinking.
Okay. Well, Dr. Chen, that's all the time that we have. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Well, thank you.